Today I want to start with one of the coolest things I recently learned about cardstock. We're going to do some folding and sometimes your cardstock cracks. And the reason why that is because of the direction of the fibers of the paper. And this is how you can test it. Just bend the paper and you will feel it resists, or it goes super easy. So when it bends easy, this is the direction of the fibers, and you want to fold the card following the direction of those fibers, and it will fold like a charm. How cool is that? Now let's get started with the first card. For the first card I'm going to score at 2 inch, at 4 inch, at 8 inch and 10 inch. And my cardstock size is 12 inch by 5 3/4. Then I'm going to fold all the score lines and I'm going to burnish. And to make the folds you can also use a ruler like I showed you in a previous video. And I always like to burnish very well and fold the card in both sides. This makes opening and closing the card very easy. And then I have my first card base. Next I'm going to decorate with some colored cardstock panels. And I start with adding 2 panels on the front. And I also add colored panels on the back. Next I have an embossing folder and I'm going to emboss 2 of the panels. And these will be visible at the front. So I'm adding them in place on the 2 open spots. And this will give me some really pretty texture when I close the card. Next I have cut a piece of lace out of a light green cardstock and I have a piece of vellum. And this lace die is open on both outside edges, making it very easy to make it as long as you need. I'm going to make a belly band or a valley band with a strip of vellum, and I add that around my card. I add a piece of tape on one side and then I pull the other side over it and press it down so it sticks. Don't put it around too tight, you want to be able to slide it on and off easy. Then I'm going to add a piece of lace and I'm going to fold that around in the same way. So don't pull it too tight, you just want it over that first layer. And when you're adding layer over layer like this, the best way is to fold them separately so they will fit perfectly. And I secure them with a piece of tape in the middle. Next I'm going to give the front and the back a pretty finish by adding a cardstock oval, one to the back and one to the front over the seam. I always like to give the belly band also a nice finish on the inside, and I do this for a couple of reasons. First, it's nicely finished on the inside as well, and another reason is that you can slide it over the card more easily. And when the cardstock or vellum or whatever you're using for your belly band isn't long enough, you can extend it by using a piece like this oval or another shape. I ended up adding another embossed piece of cardstock on top. I like the color and the texture better, and I added the number 80, and I think this will make a nice birthday card or invitation. Today I'm teaming up with Alicia McNamara again, and she has more amazing, gorgeous, fancy ideas waiting for you, and I will show you the way at the end of this video. For the next piece of cardstock I scored at 3 and at 9 inch. I cut 2 mandalas. I've added a slightly darker color to the center of both of them and a piece of vellum to the back of one of them. Next I have my card and I have 2 embossed palettes that I'm going to add at the front. And embossing a piece of cardstock, it's a super simple way to give your card that fancy and a bit luxurious feeling. Then for this card I also have a piece of vellum. I'm going to line that up in the middle, and as you can see it's not big enough, and that's where my mandala comes in. So I'm adding it in the middle of my card, line it up at the seam in the middle of the card, but you also need to make sure that you line it up in the middle of the vellum, so with as much space at the top as at the bottom, so look at the pattern really well. So I press the vellum down to my tape and then I take off the complete belly band and I add a piece of scrap paper inside the belly band under my mandala. And then I'm going to pick up some glue with a sponge and I'm going to add that to the cardstock part and to the middle. And then I turn it around and I add some glue to the other side as well. Then I take off the mandala and I'm going to press on the second one. I line it up and I press it down. And this will give me a nicely finished belly band on both sides. And this makes a really pretty card base, with lots of space for an invitation or sentiment on the inside of the card. I made another card in the same way, but this time I glued the mandala straight to my card panels and cut it in half so it opens up in 2 parts. for my next card. I'm going to score at 1.5, at 4, at 8, at 9.5 and 10. And I'm going to add some colored cardstock to all of the smaller panels, and I'm leaving the middle part open. Then I'm going to turn the card and do the same at the back. Then I cut some slightly smaller strips to fit the panels that are going to be visible at the front, and I embossed them, and I'm going to add them on top, and this will add to that a bit more fancy feeling as well. To me, the embossing really adds a lot to the design of the card. Plain cardstock is just what it is, like that, plain, right? So spicing it up a little bit with an embossing folder is totally worth it. Next I'm going to layer my complete card to a slightly bigger card panel, and then I'm going to add my valley bands. I'm doing the same using some tape, which is easiest, and to cover the seam I have some flowers this time. I'm adding one at the bottom, making sure that the seam is hidden, and I add one more at the top. And I forgot to add my greenery, so I'm going to squeeze that under. And I think this makes another really pretty fancy card or invitation. Next I have an overlapping gatefold, and I'm going to make a mark on both card panels, and I cut off that corner from the fold until the mark I made. And this will give me 2 card panels with a pretty angle. Then I'm going to add an embossed panel in the center, and I'm going to add a colored embossed piece of cardstock to both panels. Next I have some vellum again, and some strips of cardstock. I add them with a tiny bit of tape with some even space in between those strips. Then I wrap the vellum around the card. I've added a piece of tape on the edge of the vellum, and I'm going to fold the cardstock around the card as well, sticking it to that vellum. Then I add my other piece of vellum on top of the other half. I've added some more tape on top, and then I add the other strips and stick them to that tape. To add to the fancy look, I've added a few pieces of greenery cut out of vellum, and I made a layered flower that I can add on top to hide that seam again. And I finished it with a flower at the back as well. And this makes another cool belly band, a perfect finish for a fancy card or invitation. For this card I also have a double gatefold, same as the first card we started out with. I'm going to mark in the middle of the panels, and then I'm going to use my ruler to make another mark, lining it up at the top fold over that first mark I made, and I do the same on the other side. Then I'm going to take my trimmer, I line up the card, and I trim off that corner. And this will give you a nice cascade fold. I cut another mandala out of white cardstock, and I added that in the middle panel. I take another piece of colored cardstock that's going to fit my panels, and I'm going to mark at the top to get that angle. And then I'm going to trim the card using those marks. And this way the panel will fit perfectly on my side panel. So I did the same for the other side. Next I embossed my panels, and I have 2 of the same size panels, just plain cardstock. Now I'm going to trim my panels to size, and I found this the easiest way to do this, trimming them down from the outside of the panel. So measure from the outside of the longest side, and then measure from the short side and cut off the inside bit. So I've cut all the panels to size, and now I'm going to add them on my card, making sure that both embossed pieces will be visible when I close my card. And now instead of a valley band, we've seen enough of those. If you think you didn't see enough of those, then just let me know and maybe I can do a complete belly or valley band video. I'm making a pocket with a triangle piece of vellum. I'm going to make a diaper fold. I'm just folding it around my card. And I have some sticky notes to hold the vellum in place, while I'm adding a butterfly with some tape to the back. And this way the vellum will stick to the butterfly and vice versa. I cut away that vellum bit that is sticking out, and then I'm going to glue the other butterfly to the back. So this is a great way to glue your vellum invisible and make a pretty pocket. So that's another idea to make a fancy card or invitation. And now hop on over to Alicia's video for more inspiration. You can find it right here and in the description box. And of course, make sure to keep on crafting.